Thank you all for being here. We're going to get started now. I have a few questions just to introduce ourselves, the IDPs that my panelists have been using and what they've built. And then I will open it up to y'all about halfway through so we can get a chance to hear from you what things that you're curious about. I know that I was very excited to be part of this panel. I lead the SRE and platform advocacy team at Datadog and think about IDPs a fair amount. And so, especially with our announcement earlier today of Datadog's IDP, I know that some of you must be curious about them as well. To start off, I'm curious, how many people are using IDPs in their organization right now in the room? Like 30%. Okay, cool. Maybe we can get that number up at the end. That's my personal challenge here. Okay, cool. Can you each talk to us a little bit about the IDPs that you might have at your organization?
Yeah, we have an instance of Backstage that we run locally or internally for our IDP, and integrate with a bunch of the other different services as well as Datadog and security and all sorts of different types of services.
Hello. All right. Hi, I'm Brooke Chen. I'm a product manager here at Datadog. So we're offering an internal developer portal, not a fold-on platform. So I'm responsible for building it for the last year. So internally, we use it a lot for production readiness and elevating our engineering practices and all sorts of stuff.
It's working now. It's technology. Well. Yes, we do have an internal developer platform at Mercado Libre called Fury. We started to build it 11 years ago, and so we have a little bit of experience on this stuff.
If you're curious about more about Fury, Juliano's talked about it at a previous dash, so go check it out online. But first question to y'all, how has introducing an IDP changed the way that your platform teams and SRE teams use and their responsibilities that they have internally?
One thing that we've done is we've tried to kind of centralize our different data sources. So when you have things like the team's data, who's on a team, we pull that from a central place that we manage, and we try to kind of push it out in different areas. We have a scorecarding system that kind of helps to establish standards around the organization, and it's a good tool that we can communicate that out, and then the teams kind of have an understanding of what's expected of them, and then also kind of provide documentation on how to get in line with those standards and stuff like that. So we've really used it to kind of shape the conversation and be able to have good kind of communication with like a set amount of data that's like verifiable, where it's like, okay, if your testing coverage is a certain point, if you're deployed, if you haven't deployed in 9 months, if you have security vulnerabilities, we know that that data is accurate, so then we can use that to have those conversations with people, rather than needing to do like manual reporting to kind of check some of that stuff. So that's a little bit how we use the catalog, and some of the cataloging stuff of the IDP.
Yeah, for us, it's a lot of usage from the SRE team to communicate what the best practices and really like what's the production readiness of individual engineering teams and for new services. So our SRE team kind of operationalize their standards into our scorecards, and every teams and every services get scored against those standards to ensure that the services and software that get into production are meeting those minimum standards about compliance, security, and cost. Another thing that we do is we baked in a lot of internal toolings into our entity definition files. So for example, internally we have a tool called Conductor, and that's really a deployment orchestration tool. And so we build the tooling into the extensions field of our definition YAML. And basically, engineering teams will use that to specify deployment target, deployment schedule, as well as gating some deployment. Because if you never want anything that's potentially risky to get into production, so we baked into our CI/CD pipeline.
Well, before talking about how we have introduced it, I think that it's important speaking a little bit about the why, right? Very similar with the Spotify guys when they created Backstage. They are worried about the ramp up, the time that a new customer, a new developer takes to become productive. And the key to make this person are more productive, it's to bring standardization. It's to bring guardrails. And we have a famous author called Gregor Hope that loved to say railways and do not guardrails, but okay. And at this time, at 11 years ago, we have this kind of problem, but not just this. We have the Netflix Dead Star. That means we have several microservices, no patterns, people developing with, I don't know, MariaDB, Elixir, people with C++, PHP. This is very hard to handle with. So at this time, there's no the platform concept. So we just started to build something to create standards. And we started with the CI/CD stuff. We started then with creating some politics related with technology services that people need to use. And then it's possible to speak hours about this. But now about how we introduce it. Basically, at this time at Mercado Libre, it was very easy because everyone are looking for organization. Business units are expending a lot of time with cognitive load and not adding value to the product. Developers are handling with scale, configuring network stuff, and etc., and not creating a business functionality. So we started with introducing with some squad and generating metrics, business metrics, for example, time to market, mean time to recovery, etc. And with these numbers, we started to show to all over the company, and it was very gradual to put everyone on board, right? But talking about the new companies that you came today and see, we are selling a platform, or you need to evaluate Backstage. The picture it's a little bit different because first thing it's that the DevOps team became crazy because a platform, it will be a layoff in the DevOps team because a platform will do magically everything. So it's another topic that maybe we can discuss a little bit.
Yeah, one thing I did want to say about the standards that I think is good is that not only does it, like, I think sometimes standards, especially we talk about scorecards and stuff like that, it can come from the perspective of like a grade sheet or like, oh, I need to do better. But like, I think it's also a good communication tool, and it's a good way to kind of level set on expectations and also like take away some of that cognitive load from the dev teams. It's like, if you have standards that are easily understood, that you can just like create a service and you know where it is, it takes out some of that cognitive load for them to know like, okay, how do I configure it? That is it configured correctly? You know, when people need to, like, we're an older company, so we have older services, and so sometimes new services created, but old services get retired. And so it's like hard to know like, oh, what are all the things that I have to go around to like decommission a service even. So like we provided some workflows that kind of help teams through that process. We can automate some of that stuff, but also it can be kind of like a living documentation for that standard so that people can kind of understand what to do. And it kind of, it's a little bit like, oh, I don't need to know all this stuff. I don't need to hunt it down. It's there. I know what the state of my services are, and I can move forward. So.
Yeah, adding to what Mark is saying, like I think with the DevOps culture, you know, like devs and application teams are expected to do a lot more these days. They are expected to know about observability. They're expected to know about security, about compliance. But really, we all have a developer friends. I don't code anymore, but all they want to do is to ship code to production and then make their product managers happy. They don't care about security and whatnot until the SRE team or the AppSec team yells at them. So a lot of IDP, I think, is about how do we make doing the right things easy for developers, and so that they will do the right things, and instead of having a lot of back and forth.
In a self-service way,
Absolutely. I think that developer experience is the core part of why most of our organizations have IDPs or are moving towards them. But how do you find that balance between that autonomy and developer velocity while trying to make sure that you're supporting that platform reliability in your services?
Okay, I can take now. Usually, autonomy it's something that we fight with velocity. Autonomy in the way that the user developer, okay, can choose technology, can choose a service. So when you limit the options to your developers, usually you win velocity, right? Not just to develop, but because the platform will take care on configurations, setup, handling with problems, because we have instrumentate with Datadog also. And then developers can focus on bring value to the business. That's it. In the case of Mercado Libre, it's a good experience that I can share. Developers, we have 16,000 developers today at our business units, right? And then we have people from platform. I'm one of them. And these people do not handle with AWS or GCP. These people do not create some network configuration. They just code because they use Fury. And related with autonomy and liberty, if they need something that the platform do not provide, they need to provide some business reason. For example, if a developer asks me, for example, I want to develop in Elixir. No, you will not. But if he back to me and I need to develop with Elixir because my business partner just provides some SDK to Elixir. Okay, so he will win an account in the cloud, and he will be the owner, but we will implement a lot of security measures, detect drift, and etc. So we used to tell that at Mercado Libre we have controlled freedom.
What about you, Mark?
You're talking about like autonomy versus
Developer velocity specifically.
Yeah, I mean, like one of the things that we, I mean, I think autonomy is always a little bit of a balance. You want teams to feel comfortable, like they know their services, they know their needs far better than like a centralized place in an organization, and it's good to be flexible so that teams can provide like better solutions, and you don't get to this like everything's a hammer. Oh, we have these two kinds of services. Everything has to be this kind of service. But especially like through that IDP and through that portal, one of the things is like you also you get to kind of have an understanding of your software, but you also get to have an understanding of the developers and their needs and what they're doing. And so it's easier to see like, oh, this team owns these services, but like, we have a concept of like paved road, which is kind of our standard. And so you can say like, oh, well, 75% of them are paved road, but 25% of them aren't. And you can kind of use some of that to kind of gauge some of that cognitive load. And like some of those cases are like very, very valid cases. Like we had something that uses Kinesis. And so some of the like, disaster recovery type stuff with that was a little bit different. So it was kind of not exactly meeting. But rather than trying to kind of be like, okay, they're exempt from that, it's like, oh, well, these are some of the challenges that you have. You can expose that so you can have those kinds of conversations and kind of give that data and not hide it away behind certain things.
Yeah, I would say like that's how like kind of on the portal, like the managed portal side, that's how we like encourage our customers to think about it. There are definitely like paved path than paved road, right? You know, like you want to standardize the things and that you are pretty much, you know, you're sure how to do it. What's the best way to do it? And those are the parts of the platform that you want to standardize. And because the business needs evolve and because, you know, technology evolves, there are always going to be like 20% to 40% of the things that developers just want to try it out for the first time. And of course, we don't want to say like, you know, put on the handcuffs on those paths, and someone should try it out and we should like experiment. And once we get enough velocity, get enough volume, that may be something that we want to automate. We want to like automate away from the developers so they don't have to think about it.
Yeah.
One thing that developers must realize is that a platform or a portal, it's just a tool that will provide more tools. The developer need to know 12 factors, clean code, clean, and several other things in order to create a good, resilient, efficient software, right? It's just a tool that will provide, for sure, guardrails or railways.
Yeah, and one of the things that we try to do is we try to also encourage like inner sourcing. So for other teams around, if they have like a specific need case or like they have a chunk of applications or chunk of services that maybe is deployed in a certain way that's different. It's like part of our goal with Backstage, and this is one of the reasons why we kind of like to build that platform a little bit and still have some of the controls. They can come in, they can build those tools, and they can build those integrations that then can kind of go back out and be used by other teams in the organizations. Like one of the things that we were recently doing was with connecting, making sure all of our services have proper monitors set up, right? So we can connect with Datadog. We can like associate all of the different monitors back if they're like named correctly, right? But then if they aren't, we can give them a customization to automatically assign those back. And then also through that process, when we are setting up that integration, we integrate with some other different services, but we were able to add metadata back on into the developer portal so that they could, now you can like query everything and be like, oh, what are all the monitors? What are all the monitor names? And now it's not just like, oh, do I have a monitor? But now it's like, oh, now I know what the monitor is named. So then I can write automation to go look that up elsewhere. So it's kind of like, it's not only providing value, but it's like, you know, increasing your, the amount of metadata you have, the kind of like coverage you have in your IDP that you can then build automation off of to like push things more further forward.
So we've talked a lot about developers needing to do things in our IDP. I'm going to bring up the question or the elephant in the room of like, what do you do if they don't want to? How do you handle those challenges or pushbacks to bringing forward your IDP as you're rolling it out? How do you address and kind of convince people to change their workflows? We can have a little inertia as humans, so how do you get them on your side to make sure that like they use your IDP?
Yeah, well, I mean, like one of the things that you mentioned was around like reducing friction, right? And like there's, I forget what the book was, but it talks about like there's two ways to kind of do things where you can have force versus friction, right? They brought up the idea of a swimmer, right? There's a certain point where like swimming faster and using more power isn't going to get you through the water. And that's why they have like, they shave their bodies. They wear like different suits to reduce that friction, and like that will actually help them speed up. If you have a car and you just keep making it go faster, it can go faster. But if you make it more aerodynamic, it can move faster and it's more efficient. So you don't always have to like have carrots or sticks, but through reducing friction by making doing the right thing the easiest way, and sometimes making the wrong thing a little bit more manual or a little bit harder to do, sometimes purposefully. It's like, hey, you can still register your software this way. You can still deploy it this way, but like it's going to be more difficult. But if you do it on the standard way, it'll be easier. It kind of helps people to kind of like naturally come over to those standards because it's the easiest way for them to like, well, now I don't have to worry about all this stuff. Now I don't have to manage all this stuff. It can kind of do it for me.
Yeah, I think it's a lot about like working with human nature instead of against human nature, right? Like people always gravitate towards things that will provide them with immediate benefit and immediate value. So for developers, I think is like, what do I get out of this? So that might be like a lot of like friction reduction. You use this golden path, you get to production in an hour instead of 3 days. So I think because of microservices and like general democratization is actually a lot more important to say like my curated golden path are always the easiest path. So the people are just naturally gonna embrace it instead of forcing it onto them.
Yes, numbers and facts will convince people. When you share at your company that the team that are working with your platform are taking hours and not days to go from zero to production, and when you share mainly with the stakeholders, they will tend to bring their developers to the platform. And here's an important lesson. Probably the developers will not move to the platform if the stakeholders do not try to convince. This is some kind of work that you need to perform top down, but do not imposing. You need to think as a product, and you need to convince people with numbers and facts. For example, you will not need to wake up in the 2 a.m. To handle with some severity 1 because the platform will handle with this. But Mercado Libre experience, 20% of our population need to have the platform imposed, right? Because they don't want to adopt. Mainly because they are nerds that want to keep working with AWS directly. They want to keep coding with Elixir or something else. And it's fine. But they need to adopt the platform or find another location to work. That's it. At the end, these people need to know that the company have their interests. The company have to be compliant with several regulations, and this is something that the platform will handle with. It's not something that the developer need to handle.
Yeah, and
it look like hard, but
totally. And I think it's a good thing to like think about your different user profiles you have. Like you have developer teams, but you also have like more like management executive that kind of want some different information out of there. You also have like support people who are like, SRE people, app support people, different people like that who are kind of trying to diagnose issues or like find information really quick. And so I think by having those in your mind and kind of, one of the benefits that you have by having an internal developer platform is you can have those close feedback loops with your developers, right? With your customers, where like, I know for us sometimes it's harder to see what like our customers actually experience. But we can see that with developers, and so we can kind of shorten those feedback loops, hear them, and then be like, oh, well, this is how you're using it, this is what your needs are, and then kind of trying to cater that towards them.
So you're all product managers, just with another hat on the inside.
Well, the platform team really is kind of the internal like product team that's serving end developers. I think that's a lot of what like platform engineering teams think of themselves as. They're like gathering requests, use cases from their developers, and they want to offer a solution that is going to work for their developers, not necessarily the developers in the company, right? So like the use cases can vary from companies to companies.
Okay.
And just about this, for example, this developer that want to keep the contact with the DevOps operation can move to the platform team, can move to SRE. So you can provide this option before tell that, no, you need to search another company.
I have one more question for them, but if you have a question, please start thinking about it, and then I'll open it up. I have more because I'm very curious about this topic, but just want to hear from y'all as well. Juliano mentioned numbers earlier. How do you measure that success or the adoption of your IDP? What metrics matter to you? What are those feedback mechanisms you find to be the most informative?
I mean, we have like usage metrics. You know, we also have some different kind of coverage metrics when it comes to like things like ownership and cataloging, like what percentage of our things are, you know, are actively cataloged. So we measure those kinds of things. I mean,
Yeah, I would say there's like input metrics and output metrics. And so input metrics in like usage, adoption, you know, are people taking advantage of the features that you're offering? And then there's of course like outcome metrics, right? Like as a result of adopting a platform engineering practice like IDP, is your company overall shipping faster? Is software quality better in terms of reliability, in terms of velocity? Yeah, so I think there are like various stages that you may be able to like measure as a part of this.
Yeah, it's basically quantitative numbers that mean time to recovery, number of microservices being migrated to your platform, and you need to compare how the platform word are increasing versus the off-platform wording are decreasing, because if both are increasing, maybe your platform are not handling with all the use case that you need. So this off-platform word at Mercado Libre, we say off-Fury word. This word will always provide feedbacks to your platform. So if people start to create new services, you need to provide it at your platform. And qualitative numbers. These we always perform surveys, interviews, and we try to listen our users. And I forgot the name, but at the platform we have the hot something. The smiles or thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs up and thumbs down. In each screen that the user can react, you can put some comment, and you need to be very open to receive feature requests from your users, right? So the off-platform world will provide you guidance, and the users' feature requests also, right? So always listen your users.
Yeah, one of the things that, I mean, that we measure, I mean, sometimes I think you get a little too do with numbers and focus on the numbers, but like some of the things that we've been doing recently is we, at our company, recently switched source control providers. And so, like previously, like when we had to do some of these large things, it was a lot of work of like going around, following up with teams, like finding all the different repositories that needed to move. And so being able to kind of like centralize that stuff, centralize the reporting, but also even some of the tooling around inside of the developer platform, it allows, you know, like teams to self-manage, right? But also like you can just tell the feedback loops where the people that are running these programs are like, oh, I didn't have to go track down a bunch of people. I could just go and like pull up this view and see which people are done, and then I could follow up with them directly, and I don't have to like chase down, you know, tickets or like, oh, make sure that the ticket was actually done. And so having a lot of those kind of verifiable kind of things like allows not just developers, but also like project managers, you know, and different people like that to save time too.
In the end, we all just want to save a little bit of time, right?
And not do the same thing more than once, right?
Over and over again, and sometimes not correctly.
Yeah. I think like that's one of the biggest things that we've saved is like we don't have to do a lot of these like, oh, everyone go do this and send us back what you need to do, and kind of we can like automate and kind of like distribute out those kinds of reporting mechanisms so that people know what they have to do, and then they can self-manage on when they do it and move forward.
Great. So we have a mic in the audience right here in the middle. So if anyone has a question, now is a great time.
I feel like I want to go walk around and have a mic.
Yeah, wondering how do you keep your internal developer portals up to date with like a changing landscape? So like say you come from an organization that likes to reorg a lot. How do you make sure that things are consistently getting updated and not manually having to constantly change like the relationships?
For us, we try to push as much towards automating on relationships. Like we ingest some tracing data from Datadog to find service-to-service relationships. We kind of have like team hierarchies that we have a centralized platform that you actually manage through our IDP backstage for like team composition and stuff like that. There are some things that we think are still manual. Like we view like ownership, like I own this service. We like to have that as be like, oh, I have to change a file in the repository, because then it forces like, you at least know that the new team that's picked it up has had to merge code in order to get that ownership. So it's not like someone just got dropped something on their plate. They've never known about it. They don't know how to do it. It's like, well, you have to at least merge something into main in order to kind of own it, which kind of, some of that stuff's good to be manual.
And the follow-up on Marcus is a quick plug for Datadog. So Datadog actually does automatic dependency mapping and entity discovery. So that comes in handy. And now with our managed IDP solution, you can actually enrich the automatically detected relationships and entity catalog with declarative information. So that kind of helps your team to be incentivized to know like what's the diff, what's the drift between my runtime versus my declarative state. That we find to be a pretty strong motivator of like, oh, what is versus like what should be, and that's actually an approach that we want to take with ownership information as well. So one thing that we're working on is GitHub teams and GitHub co-owner integration. So we can sort of like guess, like maybe 70% with 70% accuracy, who owns the service, because they most frequently deploy the service. They probably is the owner. We find that people are a lot more motivated to correct misinformation than say fill in the blank. Yeah.
In our case, Fury handle with every upgrade, since for example, AKS upgrade, it will perform a migration. It will perform a blue-green in the user's workloads, for example. If it was a security issue, for example, Log4Shell, it also will replace the library and create opportunities to the user. Just click a button and then it will perform the replacement. If it's obviously something disruptive, it will ask to the user to schedule the change, and basically that's it. It's transparent to the user, right? Just to save time. Next, no.
We'll take in the next question.
Yeah. So obviously this works. It seems like it works great at really large companies. But what would you say is this like the sweet spot in company size or engineering team size where this would start to really pay off? If you're just one or two, 10 developers, it doesn't seem necessary. But at what point is this like a great thing to start?
So I think size is a proxy for complexity. So there's a positive correlation between size and complexity. But I would say really the true driver is complexity. So if you're working through a model of acquisitions, you're migrating old services into cloud, you're reconfiguring it. Whenever there's a lot of complexities, I think a lot of automation and standards and consistency and open communication that an IDP affords will be really helpful.
Hi, question for Mark or Juliano. You already have established developer platforms. Is there a place for the new Datadog developer portal alongside those? And if so, how would it fit in?
Well, I think one of the things that we would do, since we use Backstage and we have our internal kind of developer platform that we built, we already integrate with Datadog into certain things. Like we sync service metadata back up to Datadog. We're starting to sync Teams metadata back up there. We're starting to take services that they don't have and sync back down into our service, so that like we view like as full as our data set is, Datadog should be as full. So we have that flexibility for adopting it if we want to, and still being like starting off where we are. If there are like, you know, there's some different APIs that we can pull data from Datadog to get some of that information. Like we pulled some data from their scorecard stuff already and kind of like reflecting that into our scorecards. So we can kind of leverage that data in kind of the ways that, you know, our teams are used to it and used to interacting with it. But yeah, so we'll integrate with it as much as we can.
I think the benefit of IDPs overall is that you specialize them to each of your services, and because of Datadog's also being a portal, there are some things that you might pull in, some things might not apply, so it might vary from company to company. But always happy to chat afterwards if that's okay as well.
Yes, at the end of your company, you must use the best product, right? So the platform will help with this. At Mercado Libre, we use Datadog because it provides the best value to us. But the way that we build Fury, we can choose at our adapters if we can live. For example, at our compute engine, we are multi-cloud, and if, I don't know, if GCP becomes to be very expensive, or AWS start to have some delay, some latency, we can choose to move to another cloud provider. So this is a very good thing that a platform can bring to you. The abstraction and the possibility to choose the best to your company, not just in terms of costs, but performance, reliance, etc.
Yeah, and I also think it plays into a little bit what I think you said about like the size, and when the size of the team comes into play. Like if you have like, you know, a couple dev teams and like, I don't know, maybe, you know, 50 services or something like that, it might not make sense to like build the whole thing and to run a whole thing, and that might be where you more buy and you kind of like pick something off like if you already integrate with Datadog, you can kind of get that. You get a lot of the nice things with Datadog of being like a reliable, truthful source of real data rather than like some kind of user inputted data. You get a lot of those information radiators that can come through because they have all of their, you know, telemetry data that can kind of integrate with your IP. And so that's something that you can pick that up, start providing that value, and then like, you know, build on after that with the tools and the services that you need.
Okay, for time, I think we might just take one more, and if we have time, we can do the more, but also our panelists are available. We have a whole other day of conference. So please.
I'll try and be quick. Does anyone have any experience using an IDP for non-backend software components? So like within my org, we have a bunch of microservices, which it seems like a really great fit for, but we also have a few different web front ends and also a very large mobile app that we're splitting into modules, and we have kind of per team ownership of the modules and kind of standardized ways to do things, but I'm not sure whether that's trying to fit like a square peg into a round hole to try and use an IDP for that.
I mean, we integrate with a lot of front end stuff. One of the drivers that we had in adopting our IDP is we have a kind of like a homegrown, we've been around for a while, we have a homegrown auth kind of system that services use to connect to each other. So a lot of the back-end services, because they need to have that, are built into that. But we've provided some different tools and some different abilities for the front-end ones so that they kind of get adopted in there and they can kind of benefit from those solutions. But yeah, I think they use it. It can provide insight. Like we connected with Datadog RUM, and each service gets its RUM ID, and then you can kind of start using those to get like the relationships for the things that they're calling through some of that tracing and relationship mapping, and so it can provide value also, I think.
Awesome. Thank you all for your time. Let's give it up for our panelists.
Can I speak a final word? I write in Medium, Mercado Libre Medium, some lessons learned when building our platform. So if you can add me at LinkedIn, you will see the site. And I as a nerd, I love to share knowledge. Maybe it will be useful to you, okay?
Oh, please add me on LinkedIn too.
I'm not on LinkedIn, so you won't be able to find me. But
They said track them down and talk to them, friends. That's what we have to do. Thank you so much.